What is the biggest secret you've ever kept from your family? Mom had a handmade heirloom blanket from her great-grandmother. When I was a kid, my action figures decided to torture my sister's Barbies for information on the location of the secret base. When the Barbie general still wouldn't talk after having her arm melted to a stump on the spinny bit on top of the lawnmower engine, she was forced to watch as her co-conspirators melted in a Tupperware vat of gasoline. When the interrogation started getting out of hand, I threw water on the gasoline to put out the fire, splashing it on the side of the house and setting the house on fire. I panicked, ran inside, grabbed the first heirloom blanket I could find and smothered the fire, melting one side of the blanket. My parents' relatively uninspired interrogation techniques were unable to solve the mystery of the missing heirloom. That I was addicted to fentanyl for almost a year and then beat that addiction all on my own. I just passed 1 year off of it and I haven't considered going back once. My dad's brother adopted me. They didn't know I found my biological mom. I didn't talk to her though. This was a long time ago, but I pretended to graduate from college after 4 years of my family paying for it. The last semester of my senior year I was told that because of an incomplete my sophomore year I wouldn't be graduating. When I promised to retake that class over the summer, they allowed me to march with my classmates in a cap and gown. Instead of telling my family the truth, I just went ahead with it. The whole family came, big party etc. Of course I did not take the class that summer. That hung over my head for 20 plus years when after getting sober I completed my degree by working with the college and taking a local class. I had a miscarriage on my 17th birthday. I had found out I was pregnant 3 days after my HS boyfriend and I had broken up when my sister caught him fucking my best friend. I didn't tell anyone I was pregnant, except him. I hadn't figured out what I was going to do yet, or how to tell them. Turned out to not matter, because 2 weeks later, again, on my birthday, I woke up in incredible pain and my bed was just covered in blood. I was home alone, so I just called my ex to take me to the hospital and never said a word to anyone in my family. He and the girl he cheated on me with showed up, and she cleaned up the bed while he drove me to the hospital. I had already passed the fetus. She found it. It messed me up for a long time, and I tried to kill myself not long after that. My family does know about that, but they assumed it was a combination of my anxiety meds and my breakup. Those were factors, but the miscarriage was a big factor, too. ETA, thank you everyone for the kind words. This was nearly 15 years ago now, and I'd say eBay healed now. I still think about it from time to time, think about how I'd have a teenager by now, and how different my life would be. I came out as gay about 5 years later, started dating a woman and moved across the country with her, later marrying her. We have no children. I'm grateful that I could heal and see a better life for myself after that. When I was a kid I dropped the rake while working in the yard and the handle landed in dog poop. Instead of cleaning it off I used duct tape to seal off the poop from the outside world. It ended up being used for almost 10 years after that and I always thought about that rake's dirty secret. The secret was poop. My 14-year-old godson is actually my biological child. About 16 years ago, I disappeared in the middle of the night to start a new life away from my toxic family and went no contact with them for 3 years. I ended up getting pregnant from a one-night stand. I was homeless at the time so keeping my son was not an option. My ex-best friend and her husband had been struggling to start a family of their own so they offered to adopt my child. Plot twist, my husband and I currently have custody of my child and his 4 siblings. Their parents are in jail for domestic violence and child neglect. Edit, holy bananas. I did not expect this to blow up. I want to clarify a few things. 1. My son does not know I'm his biological mother but we plan to tell him soon. My husband and I plan to petition to adopt him and his siblings. Our lawyer warned us that his parentage would come up during the process. I want my son to hear it from me. He is currently battling PTSD due to the incident that brought the kids into our care. We are working with his therapist to find the best way to tell him the truth without causing him more trauma. Mental health is our top priority. 2. My ex-friend has endometriosis which affects fertility. Pregnancy can put endometriosis into remission for some women. She was one of the lucky ones. Once in remission, she had no trouble conceiving the other 4 kids. 3. My husband and I are raising 10 children. We are in the process of adopting my 12-year-old cousin and took custody of her 2 older sisters last week. We also have a set of biological 1-year-old twins. 18 months ago, we had 0 kids. Being sexually assaulted when I was 13. It was a difficult home life, and I didn't feel like I could talk to anyone about anything. Some guy grabbed me on the way home from school, and, yeah, I got home late, they didn't notice, but I didn't feel like I could say anything, especially as a young boy, because I didn't even know it was a thing that could happen to boys when I was young. We were never given those safety talks that the young girls were given. It was just so outside my experience I guess, and the longer time went past, the less I ever felt the need to say something, because no one would believe it. Edit, I'm shocked coming back on Reddit and seeing the responses this has got. Too many people relate to this. It's both heartening and awful to see at the same time, as I'd not wish this on anyone, but anything which shows that people are less alone in this than it seems has to be a good thing. This happened to me over 20 years ago, so thank you to everyone who offered for me to message them to talk about it. But this isn't a fresh wound, or even the worst thing I've dealt with in my life, and I'm at a point where I'm at a healthy place with it. Thank you also for all the kind words. I wish I had the time to thank everyone personally, but I do appreciate you all. And to anyone for who this is a fresher wound, or who is struggling more with what they've been through, I don't have any magic words that'll help. I just know for me, I always remind myself that this was something that was inflicted upon me. It was never my choice, never my decision, never my fault. There's always going to be stuff in the world I have no power over, even my own thoughts sometimes, but I can make the choice to be a stubborn fucker, and even if I don't win those battles, I'm not going to stop fighting them. I posed nude in a tasteful art project when I was 20. It was supposed to be a small private exhibition, but then it blew up, and at one point my naked image was on our major city's website to advertise a popular art festival, and a printed large version was displayed at a popular market during the festival. It was also printed in a book series. I was so worried my parents would see, but so far it's been 12 years and they still don't know. I am actually really proud of the work we did and sometimes consider showing them the book, but they may murder me. Edit. It was tasteful photos about capturing unsexualized nudity. No, I will not share it on my anonymous account. I was a professional model who was compensated and consented to the project, as the photographer was someone I have immense faith in. Life lesson: if it interests you, then have tasteful nudes taken. One day you'll look back and appreciate them. My grandfather used to force me to French kiss him when no one was in the room. When he got super old, I was tasked with watching him one night. He peed his pants and was pathetically asking me to help him. But the 8-year-old inside me just let him sit there for hours until my parents got home. Spitting on his face before they closed the casket was the best thing I've ever done for myself. See how you like my saliva all over your face, you piece of shit. A secret from my grandparents, who I adored. They were actually my great aunt and uncle, having raised my mother from the age of 2. Her mother had passed away and her father was an alcoholic, who ended up enlisting and going to war during World War II. I had a habit of looking through my parents' wedding album when I was very young. I loved the dresses, etc. At the back of the book was their marriage license, and I saw when I was about 11 that my mother's last name was not the same as my grandparents' last name. I asked her and she told me they were not her biological parents. I never told them I knew because I didn't want them to feel less than my grandparents, which they absolutely were. By this time my biological grandfather had passed. They were always Nana and Grandpa to me, and they were amazing grandparents. I used to live in a house where the woods was our backyard. About 15 years ago, my stepdad and I were hitting golf balls in the back with his clubs. I still had a few golf balls left and he told me to put his clubs away when I finished, and he went back inside. Well, when he was out of sight, I decided to use his $900 driver, which, at the time, was too big for me to use. I took a swing and the head of the driver immediately hit the ground and the neck snapped near the head and was hanging on by a few splinters. My heart sank and I quickly put the clubs away in the trunk of the SUV like he asked me to, and prayed that I wouldn't be murdered in my sleep. Well, a few days later my stepdad goes back to grab his golf bag. Luckily for me, the hydraulics on the back hatch of our SUV was starting to go out for a few weeks now, and it swung down and pulled a Marie Antoinette on that driver. My stepdad was pissed. I still haven't told him that I was mainly responsive for the destruction of his driver club. Edit. The cost of the driver may not have cost that much, but it was expensive. It may have been around $500. But as a kid, things that are always highly valued toward adults always seem really expensive. Edit 2. My stepdad always went with Callaway golf clubs. It was most likely a Callaway driver. I was in a long-distance relationship with someone from another country for 2 years. I would travel nearly every month to visit them, or they would come to me. They had no idea when they messaged me. I was sometimes out of the country, either in their country or on a trip somewhere else. I was living a completely different life that barely anyone knew about. Edit. It's been interesting to read some other people's similar experiences. A lot of people are also experiencing this due to culture, religion, or families not supporting. My reason was a little different. I had come out of a relationship with a very abusive and dangerous person. He had completely embedded themselves in my family's life, and when I finally left them, I lost my family with it. I moved to the next town over and kept contact with my parents, but all information about daily life was hidden. I built a life slowly, and part of that was a solo trip abroad, where I met someone. I was far too terrified to tell them the truth about what had happened with my ex. I didn't think they'd believe me, and I didn't want them to know. My parents eventually cut ties with him, but my brother stayed friends with him after. I went NC with my brother for 4 years in total. I was so scared my ex would find out and come looking for me due to jealousy that the relationship was kept a secret from most people I knew, including my parents, in case they let something slip to my brother. I have left the country now for good, and I'm sure there's people who I have some degree of connection to, that have no idea I ever left. I've always been someone that has kept their cards close to their chest, and life circumstances have contributed to that greatly. I was assaulted by my high school teacher who we all thought was straight. I'd never tell my family about my essay, but he's now in prison for 10 years on account of child porn and Animal Crush videos. Edit 1. I should have worded it better, but sexual orientation is in no way indicative of anybody being a pedophile. Edit 2. This one is NSFL because a lot of people keep asking what Animal Crush is. So if you don't want to be traumatized, keep scrolling. And I'm on mobile, so it might not register the way I intended. NSFL, greater than spoiler animal. Crush is described as humans harming animals through crushing, flattening, burning, drowning, suffocation, impaling, or subjecting animals to bodily harm. Less than. I gave $10,000 to a woman overseas I met online so she could leave Egypt and study in Germany, despite being pretty broke at the time. She did actually go study in Germany and I met her there. A few years later she paid me back. And yes, there was a bit of romance at one point, long after the loan, but it didn't last long. I should also mention we are the same age. We're still close. So, my brother and I saw Aliens as a kid and we were super intrigued by the flamethrowers. In a feat of idiotic 13-year-old brilliance, we determined that a super soaker filled with Aquanet with a butane lighter strapped to the front might actually work the same. To our utter shock, it did. Shot 20-foot streams of sticky flame. We were just overjoyed, until said sticky flame hit the side of the house and caught it on fire. Oh shit. So we race over and between my shirt and the hose get it out, but there's a large dark spot on the side of the house. So we disassemble and clean out the flamethrower and mum's the word. 30 years later, we're eating dinner over at the folks, and Dad remarks they've painted the house and finally got rid of that weird dark spot. Much stealthy chortling ensued. Honestly, how do kids survive childhood? We're all idiots. This is hard, but just how frustrated I am with them. They wouldn't have any clue just how angry I am at them for the things they did to me as a child and how much I blame them for my insecurities and lack of confidence as an adult. And that we might seem okay every time I visit with them, but how I just want to yell at them and ask them why they had to be so hard on me and couldn't just accept me for what I was when I was a teenager. My suicide note was written on the wall of my closet for 4 years while I lived in that house. It said what you could find my body, why I chose to do what I did, and explained a rough last will and testament. When I moved out, my folks, who owned the home I lived in, never found it. I'm way happier now than I've ever been, and when I took everything out of my closet and I found it again, I broke down crying. I grabbed some matching paint, painted over it, and was able to finally reconcile with the pain that I had felt for the past 8 years. To this day they don't know. Edit. Thanks for all the positive messages, everybody. Growing up, our house was never clean and tidy. It wasn't disgusting or hoarder-like. We cleaned and vacuumed, but we also had a lot of shit just stacked in corners and on shelves that after a while, that was where those things belonged. Because of this, we really didn't use the dining room as a dining room. The table was pushed up against the wall and was used as quasi-work desk/storage area. One day when I was like 10 or so, I was sitting at one of the chairs while on the phone with my mom. She had a habit of droning on and on and on. When I am bored, I fidget. I grabbed one of her lighters that was just laying around and I was lighting little bits of paper towel on fire. Nothing big, just enough to see the flame go, immediately consume the whole thing and then go out and fall into her ashtray. Then I grabbed a full paper towel and lit it. The thing burned around so fast that it startled me and I dropped it on the carpet, where it very quickly burned/melted the cheap carpet on the floor in a very noticeable spot. I start freaking out and look over and there was a box of cleaning solution. I grabbed some bleach hoping that it would bleach out the black burned mess and I could pass it off as I accidentally spilled it. Yeah, it just turned a beige carpet a shade or orange with little burned carpet fibers. I opened every window I could and moved the box of cleaning supplies over the spot. Keep in mind I am doing all of this while still on the phone with my mom. I braced for the next week or so for someone to find it and eventually come to the conclusion that it was me. No one came across it for months, and when they did it was all just assumed that one of the chemicals leaked out and did it. About 13 years ago, I was informed that I had a daughter from my first serious relationship who was given up for adoption without my knowledge. Unbeknownst to her adoptive parents or her bio mom, she had the same heart defect I do. Mine wasn't found until I was about 26. She collapsed on a field at a park near where she lived in Massachusetts while playing soccer with other 7-year-olds. She passed away before they arrived at the hospital. Her bio mom, my ex, had kept in touch with the adoptive parents over the years, and our girl knew her as Aunt XXXXXXX. She had even given the adoptive parents some pictures of us together and gave them the story that I was in prison for moving some serious weight and drugs. Complete fabrication. After our girl's death, my ex reached out, feeling guilty. I was able to get in touch with the adoptive parents. They were nice, middle-class people who loved her intensely and gave her everything a kid needed to flourish. I'm glad she had people who loved and cared for her the way every child deserved. I'm glad the particular mystery of why my ex disappeared one day without a word was finally solved. But I was absolutely distraught that I wasn't given a chance to be a father. She never got to meet her grandparents, who would have adored her, particularly my mom, who she looked so much like. I never told my folks because I didn't want to break their hearts and know how badly mine was broken. 13 years later, I stand by that decision. They deserve to know, but both are in poor health, and I still can't bring myself to put it on them. My girl would be turning 21 this July. The only reason I hope that there is an afterlife is so I can meet her. Edit. I always thought that if I ever got a Reddit award, it would be for a pithy comment, not a personal tragedy. Thank you, kind Redditors. I'll pass it on to someone in the future. Edit 2. Really, I can't thank you all enough for your kind words and responses. Further proof that people are frequently just as good as they are bad. I wish you all well. Okay, I've been wanting a thread to share this in for ages. So this is my secret with my mom and dad from everyone else in the family. My dad is married to another woman. Mom is single. Mom and dad, hard to actually call him that, have been having an affair for 30 plus years. Even their best friends don't know about it. I was an accident. Dad stepped out of picture because my parents didn't want me to know about the affair and who he was. At 15, when I was told who he was, and tried to act cool to not upset my mom, he came back into my mom's life, but absolutely not mine. I have 3 siblings who don't know I exist. 2 brothers and a sister. They have the most amazing life, 2-parent income, holidays, all the things I wanted as a kid in a family of 3 with a single mom. I went to high school with my brother. I'm mid-20s now, I still want to meet them. I just can't be the one to break the secret and crush 2 families. My alcoholism. I'm 600 plus days sober. Edit. I should clarify. My wife knows, and she's been my rock and my biggest supporter through the whole thing. But my wife and my therapist are the only people who know. My mom and brother have no idea. Edit. If you're looking to stop drinking or have trouble doing so, go to r/stop drinking. Those fine folks have talked me out of relapsing many times. I was sied from 11 to 16 by my cousin and I reported at 17. No one believed me, half even blamed me. Even my father has a familiar relationship with the guy. My dad has always had a lot of guns, both for hunting and as a hobby. Because of that, he was adamant about teaching gun safety to my brother and I. We grew up with them around the house, although they were almost always locked up when my dad wasn't around to supervise. One day when I was pretty young, probably around 10 or 12, my parents went somewhere together so my brother and I were at home alone. I was playing in my room and I heard a gunshot. I ran downstairs to find my brother holding a pistol and looking absolutely terrified. I can still remember his face. Mine probably looked the same. What had happened was that he'd been goofing around downstairs and found a gun that my dad, for whatever reason, had forgotten to lock away. Being a kid, he decided to play with it. He knew how to turn the safety off, how to fire, how to aim. We both did, and while playing, he'd accidentally pulled the trigger. The bullet had ricocheted off the floor and blown a hole in the living room wall, clear to the outside of the house. Both of us knew exactly what could have happened, and in an instant we both realized exactly what was going to happen if my dad ever found out. We worked together to cover up the dent in the floor with furniture and a rug, under the guise of having cleaned the living room, and then we patched up the wall both inside and out, rearranging more furniture to cover the patch. We both swore we'd never tell anyone. As much as we loved to get each other in trouble, we knew this one was bad. My mom found out years later when she finally found the hole in the vinyl siding and my brother confessed. My dad still doesn't know. My brother has been much more serious about gun safety since then and now has a collection of his own that is locked up to a near paranoid degree. Be careful with your guns, guys. Everybody involved in this knew better and the worst still almost happened. Honestly, just how much my cousin has improved my life. My parents were total shitbags. Both dead now. My aunt and uncle raised me. They were amazing people. Sadly both of them died in a car accident a few years ago and left behind my cousin. It was a hell of a battle gaining guardianship over her, even though she wanted that as well. I'm male, and was single at the time, so that was a pain to deal with. But yeah, she's really just put a sparkle in my life that was never there before. I had a really shitty childhood, and my teenage years were rough till I moved in with my aunt and uncle. Being responsible for her really pushed me to succeed, and now I'm living very comfortably, and semi-retired, and I attribute that drive to better myself to her. Because after losing her parents, I never want her to have a bad day again. I lost one of my mom's pearl earrings that she wore on her wedding day. Down the drain when I was like 8 years old. Haven't told her to this day, pretty sure thinks she misplaced it.